everyone, welcome to Awkward Insurance. Before we jump into the conversation, Kat and I wanted to give you guys a heads up that this episode has a lot of talk around the subject of death.
Specifically, loss of life insurance, but we do touch on other aspects of death and grieving. So if you're sensitive around this topic, or if you've recently experienced a loss, you might want to skip this one.
Welcome back, awkward people. I am Dustyne Bryant, one of two hosts. Kat Ferris is the other. Kat, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, although I'm a little bit warmer than you are right now, so I'm not going to complain too much.
Yeah, well, I think by the time this episode airs, we're all going to be complaining of how hot it actually is. So, no, that's true. We're getting ready for an ice storm here in Arkansas, and the universe is against me right now, Kat. I know we've had some conversations about this. We've had a little bit of a rough time here in my household. My oldest was quarantined because she was a close contact to somebody at school. And so she was really bummed about that because she loves going to school and loves all of her friends and generally hates being at home, but that's fine. And then just as soon as she finishes quarantine, my son gets sick. So it quarantines the entire freaking house. And we're in quarantine for 10 days. We just left quarantine 2 days ago. My two oldest kids finally went back to school. And I work here at home. And my husband works outside of the home. And he does not get it. Because even when they're quiet, you're still like honed in on what they're doing. And so they just went back to school 2 days ago. And now they're coming home again because of inclement weather. Like today is my 4-year-old's first day of school. And they'll be back in the house tomorrow. So it's just, and then like I told you this morning, and then I woke up and one of our fire detectors or smoke alarms is beeping. And anybody who's ever had a beeping smoke alarm, you can't pinpoint that sucker unless you're standing directly under it. And even then, you might hear it from the back of your head. So you literally have to have your hand on one of these suckers to make sure you feel the vibration of the beep. So it's just, the universe is against me today, but I am trying to make the best of my 1 day of solitude here in my work home office.
Well, so it sounds like, Kelly, you've picked the perfect day to join us.
I know. So speaking of Kelly, that brings us to, well, it's just enough of me belly aching and, because it's just complaining all the time. Enough of that, though. We have a great guest on today that Kat and I are both excited to have a conversation with. She is a wonderful woman in insurance. I'm all about the women in insurance because I am one, and so are you, and so is she, and it's just fun. So Kelly Augspurger is here with us today. She was recently named Hot 100 Professional by Insurance Business, and we are so excited for the conversation that she is bringing today. It might get a little sensitive. We're trying to keep it lighthearted. So we may end up putting a disclaimer at the beginning of this episode for trigger warnings. But otherwise, Kelly, thank you so much for joining us on Awkward Insurance today. Welcome to the show.
Dustyne and Kat, I am thrilled to be here. I can sympathize with you as far as the COVID and the fire smoke alarm because I had both of those things happen in my house recently. My kids just went back to school on Monday because they were at home with COVID. And so I get it. And we had the smoke alarm going off too, the beeping. And I'm like, where is it coming from? And my husband comes home and I'm like, find the smoke alarm. I don't know which one. I think it's upstairs somewhere. And so I get it. I sympathize with you.
Oh, for real? No, yeah. I was seriously walking around the house looking for this smoke alarm and knowing that we had a podcast today, I'm going through my options. Like, do I keep my microphone on mute? Do I tell everybody that if the beep happens, we'll just repeat whatever we just said? Or do I go check every single one of my kids out and tell my husband to come home and we all take a corner of the house and find this stupid thing?
Well, and I don't
know
which
option is best.
Well, and I don't know if you know this, but it takes usually a 9-volt battery. And who in their right mind has a 9-volt battery in their house?
Thank you.
Right? I'm like, oh yeah, get the double A's out, the triple A's. And my husband's like, honey, we need a 9-volt. I'm like, we don't have 9 volts. And so run to the store, get a 9-volt.
consumer warning, if you order 9-volt batteries from Amazon, the Amazon brand 9-volt batteries don't fit exactly the same way as other brands.
Oh, no.
So it's
No
kind
way.
of a crapshoot there. And I love Amazon, but I'm going to have to say, don't bother with their batteries.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if
Good
we're
enough.
going to have to take that out for product bashing.
Oh.
or not. Have you ever removed a smoke detector though? Taken the battery out and the dumb thing is still beeping
Still
at you?
beeping.
Why? Right.
OMG. Like maybe 4 weeks ago, one of these did that. And I took it out, took the battery out. It's still beeping. It is nighttime. Like I think it was 2:00 in the morning where I was walking around the house. Apparently nobody else has sonar hearing like I do. And I woke up, took this thing off. It is still beeping. So I had to like disconnect it from its wires. It was one of the ones that was hardwired to the house. And I chunked that sucker out in the garage and was like, if you're going to beep, you're going to do it out here. So good luck in the cold. And it's just, those things are created by the devil. But they're necessary. Everybody check your batteries. When you're supposed to do it every 6 months or so, unless you
when you change your clocks, that's when you change your batteries.
That's right. Friendly reminder, safety protocols. We are in risk and consequence management, right?
Thank you.
Exactly. Please do not, chuck your fire smoke detectors out in the garage and leave them out there. That's not safe. Just a disclaimer there.
Mm-hmm.
So we're so happy to have you here. Kelly is the co-founder of Steadfast Insurance along with her husband, Adam. So we have a married pair in insurance. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Sure do.
How does that work?
We can get into that for sure. Yeah.
By the laugh, I think that is a subject we don't need to go down.
No, I'm all for it. I'd love to talk about it. Yeah. The good, the bad, and the ugly, for
Oh
sure.
my goodness.
So how long were you guys married before you started your agency?
Let's see. 13 years. We've been married now 16. So yeah, 13 years we were married, and some people advise us it's not good to go into business with your spouse. My parents, being one of them, said it's not a good idea because they did it. It's not a good idea. We didn't listen to that advice, and thus far, it really has been a wonderful experience overall. Yeah, it really has. I think it's really helpful in that Adam is on the PNC side, and I'm not even licensed in PNC, nor do I want to be. And then I'm on the life and health side, and he's not licensed, nor does he want to be. We are in different locations, so we say we have like a separation of church and state. So I'm at home office, and he's in our office a few blocks down the street. So, we're not in each other's spaces all day long. Yes, we text and we email and we talk, but we're doing different things. We are often serving similar clients, but no, it's really amazing. It really is.
That is amazing. That sounds nice. My husband is in law enforcement, and every time social unrest kind of hits, he starts to second guess his career choice. And so he did that in 2020 when all of, that craziness was happening. And he was like, so tell me about the insurance industry. I said, not a chance. Find another career path.
Well, now you can direct
insurance.
him towards life and health. You can stay
right.
in PNC.
That's right.
He does life and health. A 16-year marriage after running a business together for 13 years together, and you still got a smile on your face.
And be healthy before he goes into life and health.
Well, I will say we've only had our business 3 years, but we were married for 13 years, but I have full confidence we can make it 13 more. So there's that.
Good. Well, because especially if anything, the past 3 years have felt like 13.
Seriously, COVID,
so
right? Yeah.
You're doing it right.
For sure. For sure.
That's awesome. So Kelly, you mentioned you're in life and health. You've let us know that you are a certified long-term care specialist, and you specialize in helping financial advisors and their clients plan ahead for long-term care. So that's the conversation that we're having today, because I don't think that a lot of people really, they know that down the road things are going to happen, but as younger people, especially, we just think we're invincible and that long-term care is something that happens in our elder years. And that's not always the case. And I'm sure you've got some great conversations about how that's not always the case and how you need to plan for long-term care now at 25, maybe younger, at 35. It's just, okay. So speaking of long-term care, it just popped into my head. Like when I turned 30, I went to my doctor for my annual checkup, and he's an older doctor. And I believe that he's used to older clientele. So I sit down, he's going over my blood work, and he says, the worst thing that could happen to you at your age is a fall. If you break your hip, my eyes were like, how old do you think I am?
Am I 70? Yeah.
He said, exactly. He even sends me for a bone density scan. I'm like, if I wasn't going through an identity crisis of coming out of the 20-somethings into the 30s now, and now you're telling me that the worst thing that can happen to me is a catastrophic fall where I break my hip. Long-term care planning. People.
Right. It is important to consider. Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So I apologize. I want to kind of back up a little bit at a little bit more of an elementary level because I just learned something. Okay. Coming from a PNC side, the life and health, the financial stuff, that's all Greek to me, you know? So I've seen, again, with the life underwriting and your designation, CLTC, Certified Long-Term Care Specialist, I always assumed that being on that life and health side, that you are also in the financial side. So can you clarify, like, what is that difference? Like, how do you get involved in that process?
Yeah, good question. So I am not a financial advisor. I work alongside and I'm a trusted partner to financial advisors and wealth advisors, but I am not a financial advisor. So most financial advisors, they also have extra education and extra training. So they are getting their own letters and their own designations. You'll often see CFP, Certified Financial Planner, that a lot of financial advisors will have. And so they are really diving into investments and really managing the wealth and helping to accumulate over time. Whereas I'm helping with the protection pieces, right? So those insurance pieces and in specializing in long-term care insurance specifically, but I also help with disability and then do a little bit in life, but mainly just term policies. But yes, there definitely is a big difference in training and education and focus. So when the advisors that I work with, most of them are not even insurance licensed. Yes, they know enough to be dangerous, if you will, but they do not know a lot of details, specifically with long-term care, because when someone needs, and I would say extended care is also another term for long-term care, and we can kind of get into that nitty-gritty and talk about what that means. But most advisors are not efficient or feel comfortable in even having those conversations with clients because it can be awkward and uncomfortable. And so my job, and I absolutely love it, is to be able to come alongside them and say, okay, you handle their investments and really managing their wealth, and let me help you protect, you know, what you are helping them to accumulate. Let me help you protect their family, not just the money, because this is a financial problem and this is a family problem. So let's address this and let's really mitigate those consequences to the family. And so I will come in alongside them, help them have those conversations, even how to start the conversation and the questions to ask, and really help them put a plan in place. And at the end of the day, I say, listen, insurance is amazing and I love insurance, but it's not the end all be all. It might not be the right fit for everyone, but you at least need to have a plan. You need to have a written plan of who's going to caregive, what that's going to look like, how you're going to pay for that, where you want to receive care, all of these details and conversations that are really important to have with your spouse, with your adult kids, with your extended family, so that everybody is on board. So at the end of the day, you're not crisis planning, and that you have a roadmap, if you will, of this is ideally what we want to happen. Now, that doesn't mean that it's actually going to happen exactly how you lay it out, but at least you have framework. And so that when the time comes, you are equipped and you have, you know, the financial ability to be able to pay for that, but you also have resources. And you've discussed this with your family and your financial advisor and your estate planner and all those other important people in your life, so that you are really prepared.
Well, and I think you had said something too that I think is really important. You had said something about having that choice too, of where you want to go.
Yep.
So I live in Florida, about an hour and a half away from the Villages. So those are some very nice retirement communities and nursing homes that are, you know, shoot, if I can manage to end up in the villages, I'm fine.
Right.
Just let me party in the villages with everyone else. But being able to afford that is not guaranteed. My sister-in-law has advanced MS, and from her early 40s had to go into a nursing home. But because of her age, a lot of those, extended, like they won't take her. And so like her options as to where to go are severely limited. And truth be told, a lot of the places that you can go if you're not adequately funded for it, kind of depressing.
Right. And that's the idea is if you have an insurance policy and a plan, then you are able to stay in control of your care options. And I will say, let's just even back up a little bit and talk about what long-term care and extended care even looks like and what that means. So those terms can often be used interchangeably. And what that means is if you need help due to, let's say, a chronic illness or something like all of a sudden like a stroke, and you're not able to care for yourself and live independently, and you need help with activities of daily living, so transferring, toileting, bathing, dressing, eating, continence, or you have a cognitive impairment like dementia, Parkinson's, and you need supervision, then you need extended care. And that doesn't mean you're going to be 85, 90 years old. We have people on claim that are much younger than that are under 65, that are in their working years. And because of an accident or an injury or an illness, they need extended care, and oftentimes for the rest of their life. Not necessarily, sometimes it's a temporary situation, but in planning for that, right, it is important to consider, okay, I want to be able to stay in control of my care options. And most people are receiving care in their home. And that's often a I think, perception. A lot of times people, when they think of long-term care, they think nursing homes, right? That's not the case. Most people are receiving care in their homes and want to stay in their homes as long as possible, right? Because they're comfortable in their home. It's what they've known for so many years. But sometimes it makes more sense for them to go to a facility. And at that point, maybe you need round the clock care and it just doesn't financially make sense to stay at home and bring in care 24/7. Or maybe, your spouse, it's too difficult on your spouse even to provide part-time care because it's so stressful and it really is taking a toll on their health. And we see a lot of caregiver burnout because of that. And so having options, and when you have a policy, most policies are comprehensive. So you can choose home care or facility, adult daycare, hospice care, nursing facility, assisted living facility, home care. There's so many options. So that definitely is a huge benefit of a policy, is being able to stay in control of your care options because you have that predictable monthly income coming in. You plan for it ahead of time. Plus you also have all of your other assets and income if you need to co-insure.
Now this also might be a very basic elementary question. Again, forgive me, I'm on PNC side, but what is the distinction? Because, everybody knows about disability insurance, the short-term disability and the long-term disability. Is there a distinction between the disability insurance policy and the long-term or extended care policies?
Yeah. So long-term care insurance, in order to trigger your policy and receive benefits, you need help with at least 2 out of the 6 activities of daily living or have a cognitive impairment, need supervision. Plus, your need of care must be expected to last at least 90 days. So that is different than a disability policy, right? Obviously, there's short-term, there's long-term, but with those policies, you typically are in your working years, but it's often not a catastrophic thing, right? Like maybe you just can't do the duties of your job anymore. And so because of that, if you meet the definition of your disability in your policy, then you'll go on claim and receive that monthly income. Different from long-term care insurance and being more catastrophic.
Okay. So I'm thinking so the disability income to help, or the disability policy to help pay for that lost income when I can no longer work. And then the long-term care to pay for all the other expenses needed to continue living. Okay. Thank you.
That's exactly. And oftentimes disability policies will have a catastrophic rider that people can add to their disability policy. So they get extra income if they are catastrophically disabled. So that is an option too. If you're still in your working years and you want some catastrophic coverage and you don't have a policy yet, you could add a cat rider onto it. But most people that I'm working with are a little bit older. I'd say around 50-ish. And so at that point, they either already have a disability policy or they're not interested in one. And so they are looking for that long-term, extended care coverage.
So something that came up in my mind while you guys are talking back and forth is it sounds like you are in the biz for selling independent or standalone policies, if you will. Because I'm thinking, okay, I've got long-term care. It's through my employer. When you've got an independent agent that sells this stuff, or you yourself and you're working with a financial advisor, what is your advice to other sales or agents, long-term care planners, specialists, in order to overcome hey, I've got one through my employer?
So group coverage is great for long-term care because it's actually portable. So if you do have long-term care coverage, that's amazing. You can take it with you when you leave, but it is not customizable like if you were to get your own policy. So if your work provides you group coverage, that's great. It's definitely valuable, but there are going to be limits to that. You might not have inflation protection. It might not grow over time as cost of care increases. You might be limited in how much coverage you can even get and for the benefit period. So people that are buying individual policies, some of my clients do have a group plan as well, but most of them don't. But what they're really wanting with that individual policy is that customization. They want to be able to choose how long their benefits last, how much of a monthly benefit they get. That's the income coming in, right? What their elimination period is, that's the waiting period. And if there's inflation protection, we want that benefit to grow over time, especially if you're under 70, you need to look into inflation protection because cost of care continues to go up and it will continue to. So those are all things to consider, but working with an independent agent, particularly a specialist in long-term care, you're able to look at lots of different options to really be able to, pick and choose and find the right fit. But I do work with carriers that are in, I would say, what's called the traditional market. So that's going to be pure insurance. So think of like your home and auto insurance. It's traditional. There's no added benefit. It's just pure insurance. You typically have monthly or annual premiums. There is a possibility of rate increases, but the rate increase likelihood, actuaries are saying, is about maybe only 10%. So they're not huge. So that's an option. And people that typically look at traditional, they're not concerned about not having a death benefit for family members. They want the lowest premium possible, but for the most benefits, really the best bang for your buck, if you will. So that's an option. Or we also have what's called hybrid long-term care insurance, which is basically linking that insurance, the traditional long-term care insurance, with an added benefit. So you're going to link it with a life insurance policy and you'll have a death benefit if you don't need the care, or you link it with an annuity and you have cash value. So for my clients that really like the idea of having something there, especially if they think they're never going to need care, but their spouse is telling them they need the coverage, they like the idea of having something there for their kids to pass on if they don't need the policy. So that is another option. Now, oftentimes people will reposition money, maybe from their portfolio, and do like a lump sum, but we also have annual pays. You could do like a 5-pay, a 10-pay, a 20-pay. We have a lot of options, really creative options. But, and usually people that have compromised health are going to look at those options because the underwriting is less strict.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I would imagine that these conversations are easier to have between spouses because spouses are used to talking about their financial status, what they need to look at. Insurance enrollments come up every year when they're working. So they start asking, who's carrying the dental this year? Who's, primary for medical this year based on rates and all of that. But my concern is I've been through a couple of situations where like these conversations are harder to have with your parents, your parents to have with their parents. When my grandfather passed away, I remember growing up and him always saying, everything is going to be taken care of. I've already got this, and that. And nobody ever questioned it. Nobody ever said, let me see what you have. And then when that time came, there wasn't anything. There wasn't anything to help with the funeral. He passed away rather quickly, so long-term care wasn't necessary. But if it had been, there wasn't anything. there wasn't anything there. So now I'm thinking like how hard that was on my family, on my dad, to walk through that. And at times it was just like, I don't care what you do. Let the spouse do whatever they want. I'm out of it. But then you hold on to this. I, could have done things differently. I've got parents that are still with me. So, and I'm let Kat speak to her experiences, but how do you have these conversations with your parents to go, please don't leave me with the financial burden of trying to figure out what to do in your long-term care. Please don't leave me with the financial burden of having to do things at the end of, because that's hard. And then of course, that's when you see the, what are the sites that everybody donates to in order to try and help. Yes.
Oh my word.
I mean, I can't imagine.
So
I've never had to be the recipient of one of those, but I can't imagine the stress. But how do you start these conversations? Like I said, it must be, I know it's easier with my husband because I'm just like, you're going to elect this, this, and this because you're worth more to me.
Right.
So I have a binder.
But how do you start with your parents? Go ahead. Oh, sorry, Kat.
I was going to say, I have a binder in my office called the In Case of Death binder.
Oh my gosh.
Which is basically just everybody knows, okay, here's my life insurance guy. Here's the people you need to call when I die.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I hate having those conversations as well. I don't even like having those conversations with my spouse. Talking about money and stuff like that stresses me out. So I don't even want to have those talks.
It's my happy place, to be honest with you. But it's not my happy place in terms of how do I talk to not just talk to my mom and dad, but how do I say, let me see what you have? Because not that I don't trust you. I just need to know what to expect.
You need to be informed. You all need to be on the same page. Yeah. And these are conversations I'm having daily with clients and their families to say, listen, I know this is awkward and uncomfortable, but you need to talk about it now because if and when it happens, you don't want your family left scrambling and in that crisis mode, right? And actually I've created, I call it a family roadmap, a guide to extended care planning and end of life. And so basically it lays out lots of questions and lots of space for you to write in, fill in details on your end of life planning, on long-term care planning, what your wishes are, even, your bank accounts, your advisor, your estate planner, like all the important information in your life, it goes in this guide. So that is something that I give to clients. But in having those conversations with, okay, I'm working with, a couple, they're in their mid 60s or they're 60 and they have adult kids. I tell them, let your kids know that you have this policy. Let them know where it is, along with your estate plan. If you don't have an estate plan and you don't have an attorney, I'm happy to recommend one, right? You need to work through and get a will, maybe a trust. You need to have your POAs. You need to have all of your ducks in a row so that they are prepared and they know where these documents are and they know who to contact. But at the end of the day, Dustin, it's, wanting to really emphasize to your parents or adults emphasize to their kids that we want to reduce the consequences. We know that there are physical, mental, emotional, and financial consequences when these events happen. So in order to mitigate that, we need to put a plan in place. So mom, dad, I'm worried. I love you so much, right? And our siblings do too. And we care so much about you and we are concerned. If you or dad need care, do you have a plan? If they say, what do you mean? Can you elaborate?
Now I can hear it now. Yeah, I'm going to come live with you.
Right.
Is that the plan you really want to have?
Right. Mom and dad, do you think that is realistic? Does that make sense? You know that I have a job. My husband works. We have kids. We have activities. I can't physically caregive and provide care for you. It's not an option. So knowing that I can't provide care for you, nor do I necessarily want to, and you probably actually don't want me to provide care for you anyway. Do you want me to give up my job? Do you want me to put my life on hold?
Do you want me wiping your butt?
Exactly. Do you want me to help you get in and out of the shower, Dad?
I need to get my parents out of my head because I'm like rebutting all of this because I could hear I wiped your butt.
Right. But is your dad going to say that? I don't know. Like, I think it can be different depending on the gender to gender, right? Like it's a little bit more awkward with a daughter and a father versus maybe a mother and a daughter. But
see, I've been preparing my 12-year-old daughter for this from like the moment she could understand language. I'm like, you love mommy, right? So when mommy needs your help, you're going to wipe me the way. Just
So
okay.
you know what I've told my kids? You can put me in the nursing home, but you need to visit me every week and pluck the hairs that are going to grow out of my chin. That's what I'm counting on you to do.
Right. Well, and if you want to be able to afford a nice nursing facility, Kat, right? It's okay. I got to plan for that. I need to have the funds. And if I don't have an insurance policy, I better darn make sure I'm working with my financial advisor to make sure that we have a good plan and we have the funds to pay for this. But, looking at an insurance policy for leverage and even other benefits is key.
One thing that I just want to comment on, and it's not really a question, but I'm hearing you talk about how important it is to guide your clients through these tough conversations. And so my agent that handles my life insurance, he's also a financial planner and everything. And honestly, because I don't like financial discussions, I just kind of like, okay, take care of my policy and go. But in this talking to you, and maybe it's because you're a mom, maybe it's because you're a woman, there's something very comforting about that. No disrespect to my agent, but he's a big, burly.
Yeah, no, I honestly couldn't imagine having, how when you choose your doctors, my 12-year-old, she's like, I'd rather have a female doctor than a male doctor.
Yeah. So like, I'm listening to you and it's like, oh gosh, yeah, I'd be more able to have these types of tough conversations with you because I'm just very comfortable. There's something very relaxing about talking to you about this.
Very relaxing. But I think another point to that is she's very confident in the language that she's using. She's obviously very knowledgeable and has a passion for it, which later I want to understand how you garnered a passion for long-term care specifically. But I think that's why you're finding comfort, Kat, in listening to Kelly about long-term care is just because, my mind is already boggled a little bit with the wealth of I'm going to have to listen to this particular podcast maybe 4 times. If not more to figure it all out.
It's definitely complex. And that's why most advisors either don't do it themselves or, they're just not confident in those conversations because it is really a whole nother beast. And it's why I specialize in it. So
it's really more, it's not just, laying out the options of what your long-term care can be. It's really about figuring out where that connection to the person, where that person connects to long-term care. Otherwise, it's just going to be another option on paper that they have to figure out what they're going to buy and what stage of life they're going to buy it in. They'll go, oh, I'm 30. I don't need to do this right now. I can put it off till later.
Right. This is not about presenting quotes. That's not how I do business. Yes, I do share quotes and we walk through them, but that is not until later in the conversation. The beginning conversations are getting to know them, getting to know their family. Do they have kids? Do they have grandkids? Where do they want to retire? Are they going to be near their kids when they retire? Do they want to be involved in care? Do they know what that really looks like? Do they have personal experience with long-term care? And that's usually a huge trigger for people and what motivates people in order to put protection in place. Because they have personally experienced, which I have many times, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but it motivates them to put a plan in place because they know personally how hard it is. And they don't want to do that to their family. They want to reduce that. So it's not as hard. You know what? Even if you have a policy and you have a robust policy with all these benefits, in addition to the finance, you've got care coordination and home modifications, all these great things. Even when you have that, you know what? It's still going to be hard. It's not going to be not hard, right? But if we can make it less hard and a little easier, then at the end of the day, like that's what people want. They want a plan. They want protection, not just financially. They want protection for the people that they love the most, for their spouse, for their kids, for their grandkids. And that's where I connect with people in the beginning is having those conversations and tell me about, do you have personal experience? What was that like? Did your parents have a plan? Did it not go as according to plan or did they not plan at all? How
often do you end up feeling like you went through a therapy session after talking
almost every time?
Because I feel like we're bordering that edge right now.
Yes. You know what? And that's why I really don't consider myself an insurance agent because I am having these very emotional conversations with people.
You're there
and
with
I'm,
bartenders and
yeah.
and hair salons.
Hairstylists.
Yeah, hairstylists.
Right. Which is what my husband says, like, I could never do your job, Kelly. I could never do your job. And because I think it does require a different set of skills. And there definitely is a component of emotional intelligence and connecting with people and being able to be okay in the uncomfortable moments, and just knowing how to navigate that. But in those conversations at the end, like in the middle, it's kind of awkward and like, okay, yeah, this is hard, but let's talk through this. But by the end, it's almost like an aha moment because they're like, gosh, this all makes a lot of sense. Yeah, like it was really hard, but if we can plan now for this, we can help reduce that for our kids down the road. So absolutely, like, let's do something.
So I love the personal touch that you're adding to this, again, because in my experience with life and health and everything, it's a financial transaction. So this does have a lot of meaning for you. You're kind of getting me more jazzed and passionate about long-term care. Side note, I went to, National Alliance, we have Rubel seminars, throughout the year. And the last Rubel seminar that I went to, it was about HSAs, the health savings accounts, and long-term care. And my takeaway was, I don't have to spend my HSA. I can actually use that to fund my long-term care. Again, it was a great takeaway, but it was very financially focused. So where does your passion with this and that personal experience, where does that come from?
I've had 4 extended care situations in my family. All of my grandparents needed care and nobody had a written plan and no one had insurance. And so we experienced, and I'd say my parents more so than even my brothers and I, but we certainly experienced those consequences. And we saw what Medicaid looked like, what VA looked like, and what self-funding looked like. And we didn't see what long-term care insurance looked like. And to see, what your family has worked hard for, and they end up spending everything they have on their care because they didn't plan ahead, and they end up in a Medicaid nursing facility, it's awful. It's just absolutely awful. But in the meantime, the spouse, they're putting their life on hold and they are caregiving. And it took dramatic toll on their physical and mental and emotional health. And I could spend hours talking about this, and I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but I mean, I had my grandpa live with us for a couple of years after my grandmother passed away. And, he just had very, very little. He could really barely support himself, and then was just physically very, very sick from caring for my grandma who had a stroke and needed care for 5+ years. So, but then this happened with each grandparent, but each situation was a little bit different. A couple of them were all of a sudden due to strokes, and the other 2 was just due to the frailty of aging. And so needing extended care can look so different. Most often it starts with needing a little bit of care. Like you need help getting in and out of a bed or, getting dressed. And then like bathing, that's a huge thing, right? Safely getting out of the shower, not slipping and falling. But because of those experiences, and when Adam and I started Steadfast, actually long-term care wasn't even on my radar. But I had a conversation with a friend and mentor of mine, and she was asking me just shortly after we started our agency, her and her husband, they were really concerned about care. Like they were actually currently helping care for her mom, for her mother-in-law. And she said, I know this is expensive and I know this is hard. And I've heard there's such a thing as long-term care insurance. Do you offer this? And I said, no, but I will. And I said, give me some time. I'm going to do a lot of research and learn as much as I can. And if you want to wait for me, you can. But if you want to go ahead and find another agent, I understand. But I will come back to you with answers. And, months and months later, he came back and said, okay, I have a lot of information and I have some really good resources. Let's have this conversation. And so, she really, for me, that was like almost a God aha moment where she spoke into my life and brought this up, and it brought back these memories from my childhood and even early adulthood of, yes, this is a problem. But guess what? There is a good solution for this. And as an insurance agent, I can offer this to my clients. And so because of all those experiences, I am just like so hyped up and jazzed about it, which most people are like, oh my gosh, Kelly, it's so morbid. And like, it's such a Debbie Downer. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, it's a hard conversation to have and it can be dark, but it can also be very uplifting because if we are empowering people and giving them resources and giving them protection, then guess what? When and if it happens, they have a plan and they are comfortable and they have peace of mind.
And I love how you talk about how empowering it is, because one of the things that I just learned existed recently and I've started looking into is end of life doulas. And, again, it's something that's, and I keep, when I'm talking casually about it, I keep saying death doula, which, again, it sounds so morbid. And I was talking to my husband about this. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's such a great thing. And again, people are like, end of life doula, why? But it's about, again, just dying with dignity. Like you said, even those little things, I'm fortunate in that I didn't have to deal with fortunate, unfortunate, however you want to look at it. Both of my parents, when they passed on, it wasn't a long, drawn out ordeal. So there were a lot of those long-term issues that I didn't have to worry about. But again, just, there's family arguments about who's going to do this and who's going to do that and this and that. And it's just about having dignity and peace. And so I think to open yourself up to what can be such a morbid or dark conversation, but facilitate those conversations in a way that allows that person to feel empowered, I think that's really beautiful. And that adds a whole level of humanity to the role. So often when we think of life insurance or any kind of insurance sales, we think of Ned Ryerson from Groundhog Day,
Right.
But again, what you're doing is, it's bringing agency and, dignity to what could otherwise be a very difficult time. So I'm so excited that we got to talk to you.
Thanks, Kat. And when I'm working with financial advisors, and something I actually just recently came to my mind, and I posted it on LinkedIn, and it's about financial advisors because I am partnering with them a lot. When you have these conversations with your clients, you need to set aside your financial advisor hat and put on your human hat. You need to talk to these people like they're your family and have these real life conversations of, why it's important to plan. We know it's expensive, of course, and it's going to continue to get more expensive, but just as important, we need to talk about how your family is affected. What are the consequences to your family if you don't plan? And so bringing in that human element, because you have to touch the heart before you touch the mind, that they really can, I think it really gives confidence to the financial advisor that they can be more equipped and have confidence in those conversations with their clients. That this is, again, yes, the money is important and we need to figure out how we're going to pay for this, but we need to talk about other things as well.
Yeah, for sure. It takes the guesswork out of life when you're doing stuff like this. You don't have to think about what comes next. You just have to, for lack of better terminology, sit and experience it when you're planning this kind of stuff. I'm with Kat. I'm really thankful that we've had this conversation because I'm not having this conversation with my parents. I'm forwarding them the link to this podcast episode.
Good idea, Dustin. Good idea.
So you have just taken all of the hard work off of me. So I'm just linking this all over the place going forward once this episode comes out. Kelly, thank you so much for having this conversation with us today. I know it can be awkward to have, like I said, the conversations with your parents. I don't feel like it would be awkward to have it with my husband, and knowing that I'm a planner and I plan everything until something ends in death, because if that happens, then I must have planned for everything in between. I know my kids aren't going to have to worry about this either. So are there any final parting words of wisdom, whether it's for specialists like yourself or even a consumer that might be listening to the podcast? And maybe even one of the high school or college students that partake in some of our programs that we have with the National Alliance that could be hearing this and might want to start a conversation like this with a loved one close to them.
Yeah, great question, Dustin. So I would say in planning for long-term care, your health is really important. And in order to have a lot of options and for it to be more affordable, you should start planning younger than older. So don't wait until you're in retirement or even a year out from retirement. Yes, I can sometimes still help people there. I mean, I currently have clients in their 70s that I'm helping, but it's much more expensive. So planning, just like life insurance, disability insurance, the younger, the healthier you are, the more options you have and the more affordable it is. And have these conversations with your family. Have them with your spouse, have them with your parents, have them with your grandparents if they're still living, have them with your kids so that you can really plan ahead. Again, insurance is not the end all be all. It's wonderful, a lot of benefits, but we want to talk about what that plan of care looks like and who is that going to affect, right? Especially if there's siblings involved, we want to reduce the sibling tension because often there's a lot of conflict and sometimes families really break apart and are torn apart by this. So we want to mitigate that.
Right. You didn't spend all those years parenting your kids to tear them apart later in life, right? Now, as I said, high school kids, I thought, you know what? Even high school kids may need to have long-term care plans because football, hello. Like my daughter and her e-scooter, you may not know that. That typically episode of life, but
typically there are minimum ages on a lot of policies. Some carriers won't even start till you're 30, but there are some carriers that start at 18. And I will say, I know someone that bought a policy for her son that played college football. He's over 18 because she was concerned.
Exactly. So, I'm thinking car accidents. I mean, it only takes one misstep before you're 30, and the worst that can happen to you is falling down a flight of stairs and breaking a hip. That's all I'm saying. So this was a wonderful conversation to have with you. I'm so thankful for you and your passion for the long-term care products and that side of the industry. It really, I know nobody's going to be able to see your face, but it really emanates from you. And if you go back and listen through the episode, you'll even hear her banging on her desk with her fists because that's how passionate she was. Find your passion in this industry. Find your passion about something in life. And Kelly found it with long-term care.
Sure did. Who would have known? Never would have thought.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
Thanks for hanging around for another awkward conversation in insurance.
Stay tuned for new episodes from Awkward Insurance wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to check out the National Alliance on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or at scic.com.
Now go forth and be awkward.
Toodles!
Toodles!